You guys have been really tough. So I apologize for the delay that we've been running onto, but I promise this talk is going to be worth it because we're going now to true rocket science. So our next speaker, Jon Gruen, he is a general partner at Starburst Ventures, an aviation, aerospace, and defense-focused venture capital fund that manages a quite unique challenge to bring innovation and startups together with a quite well-established sector. And he has a remarkable set of experience. He has been working over 20 years in this sector. So he's worked at Lockheed Martin in leadership roles. And what has impressed me very much also is that he is a US Navy SEALs captain right now in reserve. So I think if you don't listen, he can truly kick your ass. So I please want to welcome Jon Gruen on stage, who's going to talk about the global aerospace and defense innovation ecosystem. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Philip.
Good afternoon. My name is Jon Gruen, general partner at Starburst Ventures, and the point of my talk today is just to expose you to a market you're probably not thinking about when you do your business development strategy planning. And that's the space, aerospace, and defense industry. So for over 30 years now, the space, aerospace, defense industry, and venture worlds have never collided. They have not seen eye to eye, and there's been a very good reason for that. And that's the reason. So that spaghetti chart right there is the acquisition processes of the United States, NATO, and Canada. So somewhere in there are paths that new technologies are supposed to use to on-ramp and get inserted into programs of record. But when a venture capitalist or an entrepreneur looks at this, they just turn away and say, no, thank you. And that process was exaggerated a timeline where you're talking about, as advertised, 4 years to insert new technology. Well, we all know that's completely untenable in the venture world. Same time that was happening, you were seeing a complete change in who was spending research and development dollars. Industry started far outweighing government spending on research and development. Combine that with a little bit less than desired total spending amounts, 2% GDP is the target. You created an amplified valley of death in this industry. Luckily, we had some leaders over the last couple years who recognized that the traditional way of doing business with pretty much only the established defense primes and some established aerospace companies developing all of the new technologies just wasn't going to work going forward. So they started writing it into the new policies, into the new budgets, and started to really restructure the way governments were looking at innovation. So they created a few different mechanisms. First was new contracting methods. This is key. So the old way of doing business typically had a startup company, get funding for maybe 3, maybe 4 years, and then after that, they were left. There was nothing because there was no planning in the parallel planning to get them to the program of record. There was no support. They were just left to dwindle and die. Now, this is the United States, has created what's called Other Transactional Authority. These are new types of contracts where when you go into a contract with a government customer, you don't even need to know what the product will be in the end. It's no longer a requirements-based document that you're building to or you're trying to influence to get to a specified product that by the time you're done developing it probably is irrelevant. So that's key, first key. Second, the government does not own your intellectual property. That's huge. Again, old way of doing business, the government paid for it, they believe they owned your IP. And then third, these same contracts can be used to go to initial production without competition or sole source. So now not only do you get paid through the research and development phase, you can go through low-rate initial production on the same contract. So another element they did was increased outreach. So how do you get the message out? How do you go find the startups? How do you go cultivate this new innovation ecosystem? Well, you set up shop. So that's what the US government's doing, French, UK, Singapore. Globally, almost every Ministry of Defense, every government has started to create innovation offices that are there to be that conduit between the entrepreneur and government requirements. Thirdly, a recognition that private capital is a good thing. Again, I reference back to the old way of doing business where the government thought that if they had given you a development contract, they owned you. They wanted you to stay within their bounds. You only were able to grow as fast as they were able to give you money. So now there's a recognition that these companies need to scale. They're healthy when they scale. They're healthy when they diversify. And they'll be there in the end to service that product and make future products. So this created a new innovation model that's taken that spaghetti that was on that first chart and streamlined it with the key elements of the government providing these contracts, and the funding that comes under these OTAs is non-dilutive capital to a startup. That's huge. So not only are you getting paid, you're not taking your IP, and you don't even have to know what the end product is. You're getting money, your injections of this non-dilutive capital along the way to really help you scale. And again, on the top line, now a recognition that private capital helps those companies, not hurts them. So this is what we're seeing in the defense innovation ecosystem. We're seeing growth in all three elements. Governments are figuring out how to incentivize their own people to encourage innovation. They're doing that reduction in the contracting process. They're providing access, assets, and funding. They're encouraging that private capital, and they're planning for that long-term purchase in parallel, that program of record it's called. Private capital has been a little bit slow to this, in our opinion, but that's why we see there's an opportunity. But part of private capital's responsibility is to be value added in this ecosystem. It's essential because a lot of these companies aren't going to have expertise. Even as streamlined as the process may have become, it still takes some mentorship and some guidance with networking with those customers. And then companies, again, this is the pitch to you. Take a look at this new innovation ecosystem. Take a look at that non-dilutive capital. You have the ability to have this lighthouse customer, a very respected and large customer that will help you iterate your product very rapidly. And then you also have this large and stable market, a $3 trillion a year market globally. So at Starburst, we're trying to lead the way. Again, we are a global network of accelerators focused on the space, aerospace, and defense market. And then we have venture funding in parallel with that. So thank you very much for your time, and please enjoy your lunch.